Welcome to the Run Radio podcast. My name's Trina, and this is the Artist Spotlight shining on the Lurxx. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, it's good to be back.
It's great to have you back. It was one of my favorite interviews of last year, having you guys on. Xavi and Sabu. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You guys are just so full of energy and life, and you can even hear that in your music. And you have been going full force in it all. So what's been going on since we last talked?
I think so much. I think.
Yeah, I think the biggest change probably since we last talked is that we actually decided to go into music full time again.
Full time, full force.
Full time, full force. So I think last time it was still kind of like, yeah, we're doing it semi-pro, and it's just escalated even more from that, and we decided now we just really wanna go for it. So that basically means we're devoting an incredible amount of time and effort to it while we're still running our own language school and while I'm still doing my consultant work as an environmental scientist. So we're just crazy busy. We don't know how we manage to squash it all into our lives. But yeah, it's very fulfilling because we notice we're making huge steps where it's always, as you know, with the radio station, once you really set your mind onto something and you really focus on it, that's when you notice the progress as well. So
yeah, and you're right. It's like everybody, you're spinning so many plates trying to keep them all going in the air. Yeah. And it is hard, but I think that's great though, because they all feed off of one another, the passions, and it probably gives you a lot of energy to put into your music when you pull from these other interests and things that you love.
Definitely. I mean, Xavi's work as an environmental scientist is so important for our music because it teaches us so much about how to reach people, because he's working in outreach, so he's as an environmental scientist, not like in a lab job, but he's really out in the streets talking to people and working in a neighborhood project about climate change awareness. So this really teaches us so much about how to address these topics with people
and what people really want, which is positivity.
Yes.
And just like empowerment rather than more and more information about how bad things are, which obviously it's important that people are aware of it, but it's not what keeps you going on a day-by-day basis. And I see this in my work, and we translate that into the band as well.
So sorry, I don't want
no go ahead.
So one thing that we've really been taking care of when we were writing our newest songs now was that we just always made sure that we put in a lot of hope and positive energy, because what we really want to do is that we just give people that energy that they need to fight for the good cause, to save the planet.
I'm glad you're saying and doing that, because you're right. We need to be aware, and I've been guilty of it. Just it's daunting to think about and to worry about, which worry is not productive. So the positive spin that you're talking about and the need is important. So what are some of those positive things that you can tell us that give us some hope that we're doing things to make those improvements that we need for our home environment?
I think we kind of attack it from very many different angles in our songs. So for example, one of our songs that we're going to put on the next on one of our next releases is about wildlife gardening. So we put a kind of like a spin on a very old song. Actually, it's a song we wrote in 95 or 96, and it was always a crowd favorite, but it was called Welcome to My Nightmare, and it was very dark and gothic, and we took it and we turned it into the song about wildlife gardening, where we're kind of asking the question, why are so many people kind of afraid of all sort of the stuff that is creepy crawly in the garden, like the spiders and the slugs and the rats and all like the little animals that aren't
woodlice. How come you're not mentioning the woodlice?
Woodlice.
Usually he's like every day talking about woodlice.
And there are woodlice in that song as well, yeah. So we're kind of saying, well, like, there's all that stuff in your garden that you're not comfortable with, but why is that? Who put that fear into your mind? Why can't we just trust the ecosystem and just trust that everything is fine? So this is sort of like this just kind of trusting into nature, that would be one angle.
I think that is actually a very important mental switch, and I think that's actually one of the things that everyone can sort of try to do, is to try to get off this idea of that we have to control our gardens, that we have to control everything that lives in our houses and shares our living rooms. It's okay to learn to trust that it's fine if there's a spider, it's fine if there's a fly, it's
Unless
fine
you're in
if there's a
Australia.
That's different.
It's different because then it's going to kill you.
Then you're a goner.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of focusing on the small things, which I also do in my community work, that we're really taking people to their garden. We're not talking about sort of global, global climate change or something, which is something we also sometimes do, but we think it's important to really take these little things and say, like, well, look at your garden. There's a lot you can do for wildlife there. You might be kind of uncomfortable with allowing all the slugs in and the rats and the compost and everything, but maybe there's a way that everyone can live in this more harmonious way.
And I don't think it's a little thing. I think it's a gigantic, important mental switch that just allows people really to um, change their way of how they see themselves, also in relation to nature. That
Mhm.
they just learn to trust that they're part of it, and it's okay to live together with these other species. I think it's a very big step, actually, and you can practice that in your own little garden. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that is one thing that everyone could try to do.
Yeah. And then another song, the first song actually that we're going to release, hopefully somewhere in September, so that one's coming up. That is a love song for an activist, and that is sort of going in the mental health direction for people who maybe deal with a lot of negative feedback about being involved and being an activist and sort of speaking up and then telling people, like you shouldn't be buying all this new stuff. We should think about degrowth. You should think about your diet. You should do so. Who come across kind of preachy, and I mean that's not popular, right? People, it's like you're spoiling everyone's barbecue by talking about veganism, and we're saying in that song it's called "You're a Badass" because we're saying like. Yeah, that's badass though. That's like great to stick up for your values. And yes, people might say you're too radical. But I think that's hot. Like I think that's fire to do that. So that's addressing that. I think a lot of people suffer, a lot of activists suffer from activist fatigue, right? Like
Yeah.
because you're dealing with all this unpleasant stuff, and then you're getting negative feedback from people around you, basically saying like, "Shut up about it already." And we wanted to do basically a love song for Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good point. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people also feel it's necessary to make tons of changes all at once. And I feel like even some change somewhere can make a difference, and that's still important for people to
Yeah,
know.
Baby steps.
absolutely.
I think it's just sometimes you get these people who are very much in the environmental eco bubble and who have these incredibly high expectations of themselves as
Mhm.
well, but also of other people, where you sometimes just have to stop them and say, not everyone has these choices, not everyone has the financial means to make these choices, or like the means in their everyday life to even pay that much attention to things because they're so caught up with just surviving.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important what you're saying. Like it can be really small changes,
Yeah.
but in the end, you make one small change, and then maybe a couple months later, it leads to the next change, and then a couple months later to the next change, and then 2 years later, you actually notice, wow, I've made actually a lot of changes that make a positive difference.
As you've changed a little bit and evolved as musicians and personally, has that changed the way you perform as well?
Yeah, I think definitely the way that we attack our performances now is also more professional in a way, without
Oh, okay.
losing the chaos and the
Okay.
the punky. attitude.
That's just part of us. Yeah, the chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But as you evolve as a musician, and I think you start experimenting with more complicated stuff in the studio first, and you write these more intricate lead guitars, or you write the stuff that's really going to push you, and then you start thinking about, well, how am I going to bring this on stage? How am I going to bring this into the performance? And I think it just made us think more about the performances, whereas before, when you're still more basic, you're just going to do what you do at home on stage, because there's not really that much of a difference between it. So I think the way that we approach it now, we think way more about arrangements. How do we have to change the arrangement when we're bringing it on stage? How can we split the instruments? Because we're kind of switching instruments more. Like I started playing bass on some of the songs, which I'd never done before. So now there's the question, like, well, what are you going to play? What am I going to play? How are we going to space that out? So yeah, I think that development does reflect in the performances as well.
And also just the fact that we play more live just also led to us having more ideas, because the way we do it is that we always film ourselves, we film our shows, and then afterwards we analyze them and we look at what's good, what's there to improve on. And so we've by now just also worked out just like a couple of pictures with which we want to leave the audience. Like we have like this one moment where I'm holding up placards where it says "Love Warriors," because we just want to bring our message across to people in all sorts of different ways. So we also just like think about the visuals that accompany that message.
Yeah.
Do you ever get much audience feedback?
Yeah.
What's that like? I have a feeling it's probably pretty exciting.
It's been wonderful. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's been so motivating. I mean, this whole idea that we want to make music really professionally again, I think we wouldn't have had that without all that positive feedback that we're receiving. It's really been wonderful. We really feel like we've been lifted up by people,
and we're lifting people up, and that's the wonderful thing. We just played a show in a pub in Lincoln in the UK, which was just quite a tough area, and it was one of these pubs where everyone knows each other. It's almost like a living room, and you walk in there and everyone like introduces themselves by name, and it was a relatively like a tough crowd, and we kind of thought like, okay, they're either gonna love us or they're gonna beat us up. That's those sort of people, and it was amazing because they loved it, and then afterwards we got so much love from these people who had just gotten to know us, and they'd seen us play for half an hour, and then they were just so positive. And this one guy was saying like, "Oh, you two, you just radiate happiness." And that really stuck with me, because that's just so beautiful if you can give that kind of positivity to a bunch of people who are just on a Monday night, down their local pub, sort of in the drudgery of their everyday lives, and then you can come in there and give something to them. And yeah, it's so motivating. That I love that about small gigs as well. Like, I mean, not that I wouldn't love playing for bigger crowds. I'm sure that's coming up as well. But I love it though. I never mind playing for a handful of people in a pub, because the kind of personal connection you get with these people is just something you can't value enough, I think. So like, we're never the kind of band who walks into a half empty pub and it's kind of like the motivation just drops, and it's like, oh, now we have to play for like 3.5 people. What the
No, we're more like the kind of people, we're going to put on a good show for the sound guy if that's the only person.
Yeah,
exactly. It's not their fault that there's not more people, right? So.
More intimate, and like you said, a better chance to connect.
Yeah,
sure.
To talk about it.
As you're doing more music professionally, as you say, is that going to change the way you put your music out, or that you go about will you stay indie, basically?
At the moment we are still planning on staying indie.
Yeah.
It's just that we're trying to go indie smart.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we're actually at the moment taking a course for indie musicians, how to best reach people and how to do everything. And
basically a business development course
Yeah.
where
Yeah,
it puts together
that's
the
smart.
business aspect, which is because we would like to make some money off of the music, and we think it's possible, but you need to know how to do it. So we invested quite a bit into that sort of education. But yeah, we like staying indie. I mean, uh, we wouldn't be opposed to at some point some management company or some label, some indie label coming up to us saying that we want to help you with this or that, but it's always got to be what can they offer, and what
Yes.
is the relation like to. I mean,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be interested in signing away the rights to our music just to get an advance basically, and then
Yeah.
And we also wouldn't be interested in signing away the rights to our lives. It's like you don't want to sign a contract that then just
Yeah.
dictates how your life is going to be set up from that point on.
yeah, no. So yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, being an indie musician, sometimes it just feels like impossible to just take care of every little thing. It's just, I mean,
Yeah.
you know what it's like, right? Like
Yeah.
you just kind of think, how does anyone manage? And I think mental health is a huge thing. Like you have to be so aware of, don't let social media dictate the rhythm of your life, and don't let it get to you when you've lost 2 followers on TikTok or whatever. Like it's really important to keep a balance there. But I think what definitely is going to change compared to last year's release is that we try to be smarter with how we put our music out, because last year we basically did it all wrong. We did the old-fashioned thing. We had a lot of songs. We put out a CD all at once. And then of course really soon it's kind of an old hat, and it's like it's been 3 months since that CD came out and no one cares about it anymore because everything is so fast paced nowadays.
Yeah.
So this time around, which I think is silly, but okay, that's the way it is. So this time round we're going to drop song by song by song, and we're going to group them into little EPs, and then only in the very end we're going to be like, oh, and by the way, this is the album that it all adds up to. But we're going to be constantly releasing music, hopefully from like mid-September onwards. So to satisfy that. And for us, it's also, of course, satisfying because we don't have to wait as long to present the new music.
Yeah.
Because
Little
we're
bits of
excited
fun.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And speak on that a little more. Well, so many people are doing so many things, like we said, wearing all the hats, doing all the things, learning all we can, trying to advocate, and so on. The mental health can be overwhelming for everybody. What do you guys do to kind of stay sound?
Take walks.
Yeah. And really talk about it. I think the thing is that, I mean, the two of us, we just have this routine of really taking relatively long walks every day, at least an hour every day, where we just go into nature, into the woods. And I think that we just really also discuss stuff like, how do we want to handle negative comments, what are the mental strategies there, or like how much of your biography do you want to disclose, what are the personal topics that you just like want to keep private for yourself because you're not comfortable with sharing it with everyone. I think it's just important to really reflect, be aware of it in order to kind of stay on top of it so that you can control it.
Yeah, and I think as far as the workload goes, you just have to be honest with your business partner, band partner, whatever, and with yourself, where you have to draw a line. Like for example, now we just came back from a little mini tour where we went and did like 4 gigs in 5 days, and it was a huge round trip because we went to a friend's wedding way up in Scotland, so it was like a 1,000-mile round trip, and we stopped on the way to play some shows. And that was just very exhausting. Sabu had just been a bit sick before that, and after that he then also just drew the line and said, for some days I just can't do creative work now. I'm drained. Like I need to rest, and he just slept a lot. And then
and I was then also saying, for example, can you please wait until we continue work on the next new song, because I want to be involved in working on that song, but at the moment I can't. I probably have to do that next week and not right now. And so I think that's really important, that everyone has the possibility to say, hang on, stop, I need time, I need space, I need to sleep.
Yeah.
And can you please respect that?
Yeah, I think respect is a big thing there, because I think in a lot of group situations, be it now a band or be it a business, um,
or a partnership, like
yeah,
couple situation, family situation, whatever.
the other people in the room who are also involved in whatever project it is can build up a lot of pressure, um, if there's not this awareness and this respect for each other. So, and I think without probably building up pressure without meaning bad, like, you know, if I now went ahead and said like, oh, but I already wrote, like, I went ahead and just wrote like all these parts for that new song because I was inspired, and then he'd feel like this went completely over his head and he didn't get the chance to be involved, and then there'd be all this kind of tension, and then that would lead to more tension. And I think that's how it builds up a lot. And I think as long as you're just really honest with yourself and with everyone else and communicate it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Not just
compassion, communication.
Yeah.
And
don't
it makes
expect
a
the
big
other
difference.
person to just realize what you're going through.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
like, even if you're giving signals, like, I think it's always safer to just speak up and just say what's the matter, rather than just waiting for the other person to say, oh, you look tired. Do you, you know?
Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I'm tired. You gotta say it. Yeah, it makes a big difference. So what is it looking like for you for the rest of 2023 into 2024?
Busy.
Busy.
we started now working on a new musical project. So we just started working with our amazing producer James Michael, who was the lead singer of 6 a.m. Project with Nikki Sixx and DJ Ashba, and he is incredible. And he's demanding.
It's the first time that we're working with a producer of that caliber. Because I mean, he produced Meatloaf and the Scorpions and Mötley Crüe. I mean, he worked with the big guns, and he's giving us so much input and asking us. You know, we'll send him some takes, and then he'll be like, "Oh, that's great. Could you write a second rhythm guitar there that just kind of fills these spaces there, so I can kind of pan it in the mix?" And then it's like, okay, I'm gonna write a second rhythm guitar. Like, it's like,
and then we send that in, and then the next day he's like, yeah, I feel like there's still some space for a third guitar. Can you come up with a third guitar? So, you know, he's just like constantly demanding,
keeping you on your toes.
Yeah,
and it's great. So cool. We love it.
Yeah.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, that's the way it's gonna be, you know. So we'll be just like, he's gonna push us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful.
And I mean, there's gonna be about 12 songs we're gonna do with him if we all don't run out of steam at some point. But the plan is to really do around 12 songs, so that it'll be about a song a month, so that the next year is just gonna be like that. It's gonna be a crazy ride. But it's great because so far all of our studio experience was always very limited by financial constraints, and it was always the kind of thing where, like, oh yeah, we take the midnight deal, where you come into the studio at midnight and then you're there until 5 a.m. That's the cheapest rate, and that's the time you have to do your recording and your mixing, and then you're out of there. And of course you can never really pay attention to detail or go back in or change something around, and now we do it we have a home studio set up, and we're just sending takes back and forth. And he actually gifted us.
Oh yeah, that's an amazing story.
He gifted us a microphone, because we didn't have a very good microphone for the home studio, and we kind of were like, well, what's a good microphone we could get? And then he was like, well, don't buy one. I've got microphones. I'm gonna give you one. And he gave us the microphone that the album The Heroin Diaries were recorded on. So that's in our room now. That's what we're working with. And
how cool is that?
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, we just, when that arrived, we just felt like, oh my god, we're unwrapping like a piece of music history.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And that of course gives us the possibility now to do as many takes as we want. We did the bass take. I think it took us like 122 takes until we had the bass down, but then it was really good, and we're loving it. I mean, it's very time consuming, but it's just wonderful because you really get what you want, and you don't have to settle for second best because the engineer is saying like, here, you know, we're running out of time, guys.
Right.
Yeah, that because that's what it used to be like, right? Like,
yeah,
they would just kick us out of the studio when time was up.
Right. It is nice. It is one of the advantages of the technology. I mean, just like us getting to talk, you
Yeah.
know, because of the technology that we have that we can take advantage of.
Yeah.
I am so excited for you guys. I hope you'll keep sending the music to Run Radio. We will keep supporting and playing it. And please come back when you are ready to talk more about your next project. I am loving it. I'm so happy for you guys. And we'll just keep supporting you.
Thank you.
you
We'll
so much.
definitely be back, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Love it. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank
Talk
you.
soon.